Hey guys, hope you guys doing well. Hope you guys doing fantastic. Hope you guys are happy. No matter what you're going through on the weekends, I'm hoping you're having a blast one, okay guys? I just decided to make this video because I've got something in my heart that I've been thinking about for a while. I guess never had enough sort of words and the pattern of how I think in order to produce this video. But today, when I was literally just doing the household cleaning, right? The kids are out. She's doing her swimming lesson, so I've got a bit of free time. I was just getting the house ready to get it cleaned out for lunch. I'm gonna tackling the garden later on in the day, and I thought to myself, I want to make that video today because I think it's a very important topic, especially for newcomers to the watch hobby, which I'll explain to you guys in a minute. But I think it's also important for collectors like myself, which I still consider myself amateur collectors. But I've been in the hobby for a couple of years, and I've done a few things that I think will be valuable for collectors like myself. Entering their first automatic watch, the first Seiko, of course, depending on what ages you are, what kind of income that you're making in your life. That's all going to be relevant. But I think this topic is going to be especially important for the newcomers, and very important even for collectors like myself. And so let's get straight into it. Okay, so today's topic is really, look, there's many ways to put it, but let me just say these: specs important factor, or should we value spec over everything else? Because I tend to believe that's one of the most, if I can say, most controversial topic in the affordable watch collection in that part of the industry. Beyond, you're looking at beyond, between 200 US dollars, between 200 to 2,000 or 1,000 bucks, however you want to range it. Especially important for that 500 bucks range. In particular, important for the brand of Seiko. Okay, as we know, personally, this is the one of the best brands, if not the greatest brand. I'm loving it. Okay, so let me get straight to it. I'm gonna split my thoughts into two parts, and I'll try to explain to in a balanced way. And hopefully, you will find this beneficial to you. And if you do, please make some comments down below on how sort of you felt about it, or just chiming on any insights you perhaps in your mind. Okay, so now the first part I'd like to talk about it is, yes, specs are important. Okay, specs are important. Now we have few classic Seikos in front of us, which we know we have the SKX. This is 009. We have the beautiful Black Turtle SRP 777. And just for the argument's sake, which I think this will be important, very iconic SRP. Wow, my memory stopped failing me. This is the second gen SRP 461. I just called it the Super Blue Monster. So second gen monster, one of the iconic design which Seiko discontinued, of course, back. And of course, on this side of the table, we'll have two modernized premium, with what I believe, which is a sort of entry level and the sort of material level. The entry level that we have here is the King Samurai SRP. This is the SRP 436, I believe, the Coral Reef Samurai with the King version, which means the spec goes up, which is sapphire crystal and ceramic bezel. And this is, we all know, the legendary 62 match, which I believe is already being discontinued, with the version without the 3 o'clock loom, which you like it or not, but I love that. Love that little touch. Very beautiful watch. This is a meteor Seiko when it comes to how they structure the lines. Of course, as we know, with the sapphire crystal, the historic design with the 62 MAS, their first ever diver, beautiful bezel. The whole package is unreal. Okay, so we've got those few watches on the table. So the first part, as I said, of my videos, I want to talk about, look, the specs are important. So for anyone that they're saying sapphire crystals are not important, I don't think they're telling the truth. They are important. They're very scratch resistant, if not impossible to scratch, and that's going to pay a lot of value if you intend to keep the watch in a long term in your collection. For anyone that's saying ceramic bezel are not important, yes, it is. It is shining. It reflects light better than aluminum or steel bezel. Gives you a touch of modernized design element, and you often find that very appreciative in the broad sunlight. Of course, when you have the right light shining on it, it looks magnificent. Okay, so Of course, we'll mainly talk about those couple things, the crystal and the bezel. That seems the most obvious specs that people talking about. Okay, what crystals you have, what specs you have. Of course, we talk about little detailed things, whether the sort of the date window is framed, or whether the watch have a signed crown, all that kind of stuff, right? But mainly, we're talking about, besides the finishing of the watch, we talk about crystal and we'll talk about bezel. Okay, that's why the king version of the watch, when they sort of developed the line from traditional, turtle and samurai, the first two elements that they decided to upgrade is crystal and the bezel, because that's being yelled, that's being announced, that is being communicated from our watch lovers and collectors, and there's nothing wrong with that. So the first part of my video saying the specs are important. I'm loving them. Sapphire crystal, magnificent. I'm confident. Of course, I feel more confident wearing them. Even this has a diamond crystal, but no, it's going to be almost impossible to scratch them. Why not? That is a great point. That is a great point. It is durability and it's a longevity. I can't fault that. So let's get the conclusion right. The first side of the coin, we have always two sides of the coin. Is specs are important, and if you value them, you should pursue them. You should buy them. All right. Specs are important. Of course, movements and all that, they're important as well, but that's another topic to itself, right? So I'm focusing on the exterior, which people tend to fall in love or see the most, or spending most of time looking at. And the second part of my video, I'm going to say the other side of the coin, that specs are important, but they are not all. They don't, the specs, or I put it that way, the specs don't dictate the value or legendary iconic design or watch in the history of horology. Let's just put it very on a high level. Okay, look, I don't think that conclusion to what I just said applies to one brand. It doesn't just apply for Seiko, but of course I only have Seiko, and I have you guys, so I can only use what I have. So specs are important, but they're not all. They don't dictate the true value of a wristwatch. They don't dictate the true value of the watch on your wrist. So we'll talk about those few watches. The SKX, of course, as we know, aluminum bezel and the Harlex crystal. We know the SRP Turtle was, released 6-7 years ago, when they pretty much reissued the 6309 legendary Harlex and aluminum bezel. And of course, we have the cult following Monster Gen 2. This is a tremendous watch, guys. But you know what? Harlex crystal and a coating over. It's still bezel. I'm just guessing it. It could be aluminum, but the way that it shine lights, I feel like this is made of steel, stainless steel, right? So, with three of them, none of them has the same sapphire crystal those two has. None of them has the ceramic bezel that King Samurai has. Doesn't mean the value of the watches are reduced because they don't have the same spec. Doesn't mean those watches, they don't serve as significant importance in the brands when it comes to divers or horology. Doesn't matter. Not one bit. Not one bit. You might ask me why, Felix. What makes you say that? They don't carry the same spec. If I take this bezel, and of course I have the concrete around the patio. If I do a hard sort of glide through that concrete, I'm gonna scratch everything up. It won't look the same. Of course, you want to be careful with your watches when you have, just protect your wrist, really. But of course, you want to give a good amount of care when you have any wristwatches on you. Of course, unless you're serving different jobs and different line of duty. So why do you say that, Felix? They carry superior specs, superior glass, superior bezel, more durable than them. But why are you putting them on the same table and make them equal in your collection? Because I tell you what, guys. If you want to ask me, I'll give you one simple conclusion and evidence in front. The wristwatch, the history of wristwatches and watches, on your wrist, it's been going on for, of course, I don't claim I'm the expert in this field, but it's been going on for hundreds of years, more than 100 years. In the beginning of the watches, Do you think that people actually appreciate less if a watch was made with less durable material? Did you know that Rolex? Did you know that Rolex Submariner only started using um, sapphire crystal in 1980s, around that year, on the Submariner? They started changing from acrylics mineral to sapphire crystal. So not that long ago, really about 40 years ago, if you're considering how great the brand is nowadays, they only started using sapphire crystal on the Sub. And Sub was expensive watch, and it was the watch, I believe, even though I, of course, wasn't living in that time, but anyone that sort of had a Sub or encountered with a Sub in your, young ages, do chime in the comments below. But it was iconic. A Rolex was iconic. Of course, using sapphire crystal in 1980s was a new thing at the time. But can you say that any Rolex Submariners that made prior 1980s that were using acrylics was less? I think you would disagree with that conclusion straight away without me saying anything at all. But if I give you a well-maintained, well-cared vintage Rolex Submariner, how much it will be worth. So that's the evidence. Of course, when it applies to different level and prices of the watch, we'll have Seikos here. But what it doesn't change is the true appreciation towards the design and the inspiration from the watchmaker. Because truly, don't ever forget, folks, those watches didn't fall from the sky. Those watches once before was an idea presented by someone, by a watch lover, a diver's when it comes to from a diver, someone in reality that needed something to improve their life. It started with an idea, and it was received by a company which is really just a group of people: watch designers, watch engineers, watchmakers, watch managers, production line managers. Of course, throughout the time the industry changes, but never forget those watches didn't fall from the sky. They were made by people with flesh, people just like you and me, with blood. But what they did possess that different from you and me is they were artists. I don't know what kind of degree or special areas of expertise they had in order to get a job at the Seiko. But they were not ordinary people. They sacrificed days, hours, weeks, years in the design room, in their production line, in their lab, to come out with the design with their inspiration and heart, knowing there is a chance if they can pull that design off, it might become legendary or sells well for the company. Some of those watches ends up noticed by nobody. We don't even know they existed. There are many watches that just gone wasted with no, but there are designs and overall aesthetics, there are overall products like this, the Turtle, the 639, the XX, and Monster. They are being followed by iconic status, not because the specs they had, but because they were made by people who have a great passion for watchmaking. So when you're putting a piece like that on your wrist, and the way that you think about these watches, not because, hey, I'm buying a micro brand, because that micro brand claims they have the movement, they have the sapphire crystal, they have the bezel that is made by ceramics that can last forever. What else are you going to say about that? Nothing. And I can guarantee if that's the attitude that you wear a wristwatch on your wrist, sooner or later you're going to quit your hobby. Sooner or later you will give up, stop looking at your watch, and your passion will slowly to go away. But when you're wearing one of those, you don't think about the spec. You don't think about, is this crystal made by sapphire crystal? Oh, is that bezel durable? Oh, what is this made of? Guys, I tell you what, man. Folks, from a clarity standpoint, you don't see nothing on my Rolex. From any perspective, I actually prefer Rolex. Don't get me wrong, I still like my sapphire crystal, but you don't have to dislike one thing to like another. Okay? But when you're wearing something like this, you know that you're carrying a story, you are carrying a legend, you are carrying something that will last throughout the test of time. Something you can feel very proud if you have a daughter. One day you will give to her husband, give it to her boyfriend, give it to her spouse. If you have a boy, when your boy graduates from high school, getting the first job, or going on a camp, you know you are giving them something that you are proud of and they can rely on. There you go, guys. That's why I don't think specs do it all. They are important, but when it comes to my way of collecting my pieces, they don't dictate what I collect. Not at all, guys. Not at all. Not 1%. I collect wristwatches that I'm proudly wearing on my wrist because I know there's been sacrifice, inspiration, love, and passion behind its making. And if you think about that every time when you put a watch on your wrist, that certainly improves the quality of the time spending with it. If you're doing in a line of duty that requires reliability, they are. If you're doing creative work, surely you can borrow inspirations from them. And if you're just doing office work, just doing a 9 to 5, I understand, just get throughout your day. Knowing that you're wearing something that was made by people greater than yourself. That's all. That's all you gotta think about. And I'm sure it has helped you. If you listen to this far on this collecting, you can call this collection tips, or just my opinion on spec versus non-specs, if you want to call it. Right? Every single micro brands out there trying to lure your money in. Nothing against them. But the only thing they advertise besides their short story is, oh, we're made by sapphire crystal, we're made by ceramic bezel, it's got coated over the hard coating of 1,000 times, and it's got anti-reflector coating with many layers you'd never imagined before. What else you can say about it? That's right, nothing. So there you go, guys. Thank you if you listened to this far. Hopefully it has helped you in some shape or form. You can come back to this video every time when you struggling choose to add which one into your collection, and I surely believe that you will find some benefits in what I just said. Okay, guys? Now, with that out of the way, hope you have a great, fantastic weekend doing whatever that you feel proud and you feel inspired on your wrist. Okay, guys? So with that out of the way, I wish you a great one, and no doubt, I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye, guys.